I woke up as a cold notification tone sounded in my head, feeling a sudden wave of heat and perfume hit my face. My eyes opened to find my overtime work computer gone, replaced by a woman in yoga pants with her back turned right in front of me. The distance was so close that I initially mistook it for a giant peach. At the same time, I realized I was completely paralyzed, unable to move anything except my head. Looking around, I found myself lying on a gray-white cement road. The rough surface reflected blinding white light under a blazing sun, while an endless expanse of yellow sand swallowed the horizon in all directions. The undulating dunes stretched like frozen waves into the scorching sky. The system notifications announced our arrival in the desert highway survival game. Everyone worldwide over 18 was dragged into this effort, with each team randomly assigned 50 people. 1 hour after our convoy departed, monsters with an initial speed of 10 kilometers per hour would pursue us, and getting caught meant death. Survival was starting in 10 minutes, during which we were completely frozen. We would pass through stations, ruins, and oases, using shared bicycles that could be upgraded along the way. As I processed this information, I felt a deep shock, but I tried to rationalize it. At least I did not have to work overtime anymore. I needed to quickly assess my team, especially with only a minute left in the countdown. Panicked female voices began echoing around me. One woman cried about the scorching ground, another begged someone to get off her hair, and a third choked with fear, explaining she had just been soaking in a warm bathtub moments ago. I glanced toward the sound and saw a foam-covered naked woman steaming on the hot pavement. Then a louder female voice tried to calm everyone down, pointing out that our team seemed to consist entirely of women, which meant fewer safety issues. Almost simultaneously, a shrill voice screamed in despair about how 50 women were supposed to survive in such a harsh world. I finally noticed the terrifying anomaly around me. Scanning the crowd, I saw women of all heights, builds, and outfits, some in pajamas, one cosplaying the game character Ganyu, and others in business suits. Including the woman in yoga pants in front of me, there were 49 women in total. I was the only man. My vision went dark, and I felt as if the sky had collapsed. On Earth, this diverse collection of beauties would be a dream, but in a life-or-death survival game, it was a nightmare. Having played competitive games, I knew the physical and tactical reality of an all-female squad. They lacked raw strength, stamina, outdoor experience, and emergency response capabilities. I was anchored to a completely unbalanced group. An environmental report flashed before my eyes, stating the current desert temperature was 40 degrees Celsius, expected to reach 55 that afternoon, with ground temperatures already at 46 degrees. We were designated as Team 341 with 50 participants. I felt a pang of deep despair, realizing that my struggle for survival had barely begun and I was already half dead. Even 49 muscular men would have provided better survival odds than this. Just then, a new system announcement appeared. It declared that desert survival was 3 minutes away, pointing to 50 shared bicycles parked 100 meters ahead. Tip 1 mentioned vehicles could break down but could be repaired and upgraded. Tip 2 revealed that the first beginner supply station, 5 kilometers away, contained 50 talent crystals ranging from S rank to F rank on a first-come, first-served basis. The sight of silver-gray frames shimmering in the heat sent a massive surge of adrenaline through me. An S-rank talent crystal was up for grabs. My anxiety instantly evaporated, replaced by ruthless determination. Having 49 female teammates suddenly felt like an advantage, and I vowed to claim that top-tier talent for myself. However, as my eyes lit up, I noticed the women around me turning their gazes toward me. Their natural sense of crisis made them immediately identify the only man in the group as their biggest threat. A middle-aged woman in a dress shirt pointed at me, shouting in a sharp voice that they needed to stop me from reaching the bicycles first. A younger girl countered, suggesting that letting the strongest member get the best talent to lead us like a lion in a pride made more sense. The middle-aged woman sneered, loudly proclaiming that male lions were lazy, never hunted, and forced the lionesses to do all the work. She warned that if I became number 1, I would oppress, exploit, and enslave them, even whispering that I might violate them. The girl in the Ganyu cosplay gasped in terror, imagining I would turn her into a sex slave and bait for monsters. My lips twitched in utter disbelief at their ridiculous logic. Yet I knew with absolute clarity that the brutal struggle for survival had already begun before we even moved an inch. Cooperation or betrayal, trust or hostility, every choice mattered. Seeing their hostility mounting, I knew I had to act immediately to dismantle this dangerous alliance against me before the countdown hit 0. I took a deep breath of the scorching air, speaking in as calm and clear a voice as possible to diffuse the rising tension. I pointed out that even if my physical strength allowed me to reach the bikes first, I was still just one person out of 50. No single individual could survive this brutal environment completely alone. Shifting the focus directly onto the middle-aged woman, I called out her hypocrisy. While she was urging everyone to block me, she was standing far behind the front line where she would not have to do any actual blocking herself. I asked the group if she was truly looking out for them or simply using them as pawns to eliminate her main competition for the top spot. Sweeping my gaze across their wavering faces, I pressed the importance of unity. I reminded them that sowing discord right from the start would destroy our team before we even faced the pursuing monsters. I emphasized that surviving required cooperation and combining our abilities, then challenged the group to choose between fair competition and destructive infighting. My words split the crowd. Several women began voicing agreement while others muttered in doubt, successfully breaking the unified front against me. As long as they remained divided and neutral, I had the advantage I needed. The system countdown hit 0 and lifted our movement restrictions. I instantly shot forward like a released spring, sprinting toward the shared bicycles 100 meters away. The middle-aged woman screamed for others to grab me, but I shoved her aside without slowing down and sprinted ahead. Behind me, a chaotic chorus of screams and crashing bikes erupted as women tripped over heavy clothes, struggled barefoot, or burned themselves on the hot frames. Ignoring the commotion, I threw myself onto the first bicycle, ignored the searing heat of the metal seat, and pedaled hard. Dust and wind slammed into my face as sweat drenched my back. I kept my eyes glued to the rough pavement, carefully steering around loose sand traps to avoid a catastrophic wipeout. After 20 minutes of intense pedaling, a concrete bus shelter half buried in the sand appeared on the left side of the road. I pulled over, rushed inside, and found 50 small crystal balls glowing faintly on a concrete bench. The golden halo around the center sphere instantly caught my eye, marking it as an S-rank talent. My heart hammered as I grabbed it, instantly receiving the system prompt for the S-rank talent called Hint. Other survivors were fast approaching, so I immediately activated the golden crystal, feeling its light dissolve into my palm and flood my mind with profound insight. When I tried to grab a second crystal, the system informed me that each survivor could only fuse one talent. An idea instantly took shape in my mind. Relying on an S-rank talent while bogged down by 49 useless teammates was a death sentence. I needed to build a capable team. I ripped off my sweat-soaked coat, swept all 49 remaining crystals into it, tied the bundle tight, and stuffed it into my bicycle basket. I remounted my bike, turned around, and waited for the exhausted group of women pedaling toward the shelter. As they drew close, I held up my hand and ordered them to stop, patting the bulging coat in my basket to show I held all the remaining talent crystals. The middle-aged woman erupted into a furious rage, screaming that she had been right about me all along. Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd, but I remained completely composed under their glaring eyes. I told them to calm down, assuring them that I had a rational plan that would benefit the entire group. I explained that my S-rank talent allowed me to perceive hints about which talent best suited each individual. By assigning crystals based on these insights, our entire team could maximize its power, making even lower-grade talents function brilliantly. I then offered them a choice to either let me distribute the talents optimal for the team or dump all the crystals on the ground for a chaotic scramble. To ensure they would not resent my authority, I put the decision to an immediate show of hands. By framing the distribution as a democratic vote, I maintained full control over the valuable crystals while making the group feel responsible for the outcome. Under the immense pressure of survival, rationality prevailed, and a majority of the women raised their hands to agree with my plan. Even the middle-aged woman, despite her livid expression, reluctantly raised her arm above her head. Without wasting any time under the blistering sun, I immediately took out the first A-grade talent crystal, which radiated a striking purple light. I announced that it contained a powerful healing talent, then scanned the group. My vision immediately displayed system hints next to each candidate, predicting their future loyalty and effectiveness. The prompt for the cosplay girl, Tong Yan, indicated she would become an excellent healer with a chance of deep loyalty, so I decisively selected her. Surprised and thrilled, she stepped forward, accepted the purple sphere, and activated it instantly. She confirmed to the crowd that the talent scaled with mental strength, revealing her mental attribute was 20 points, the highest in the group. Because Tong Yan had previously slandered me as a pervert, giving her the best talent proved my complete impartiality. Everyone accepted my authority without further protest. I instructed Tong Yan to treat the injured, starting with the naked woman, Song Ya, who was severely sunburned and blistered from lying on the scorching road and bicycle seat. Tong Yan placed her hands on Song Ya, casting a soft white light that rapidly erased the burns and restored her smooth skin. Song Ya moved in shock, relieved of her pain but deeply embarrassed by her nudity. Tong Yan playfully complimented her glowing white skin, easing the awkwardness and brightening the group's tense mood. With the crowd now relaxed, I introduced the second A-grade crystal, which granted a luck talent capable of avoiding hazards and boosting resource acquisition. My system hint pointed directly to Song Ya as the ideal candidate. Blushing under everyone's gaze, she steeled herself and walked over. To help her, I took off my coat, wrapping the remaining crystals, and handed it to her to wear. This exposed the gleaming pile of talent crystals underneath. Seeing the exposed loot, the middle-aged woman lost her mind and lunged forward to snatch an A-grade crystal. I was completely prepared, sweeping my leg to kick her hard to the ground. I issued a final icy warning, making it clear that I would not tolerate another stunt. Terrified by my glare, she silenced her resentment, and my swift action instantly solidified my absolute authority over the group. I quickly distributed the remaining talent crystals without further interruption. 3 women received B-grade talents and introduced themselves. Leng Chu, a suit-wearing fund manager with a water creation talent, Lori, a college student in a short skirt with a speed enhancement talent, and Luo Bing, the yoga teacher from earlier, who possessed a vehicle driving talent. With the primary abilities assigned, I summarized our roster as possessing 1 S-grade, 2 A-grade, 3 B-grade, and 44 lower-grade talents ranging from C to F. Postponing any further introductions to save precious time, I ordered the team to mount their bicycles and move out. With basic talents secured and a clear hierarchy established, our 50-person convoy pushed forward down the scorching desert highway. Yellow sand, a scorching sun, and an endless desert highway stretched out before us. Luo Bing and I took turns riding at the front to break the wind. As a man who exercised regularly, I had the physical strength to hold out for the time being, while Luo Bing relied on her veteran driver talent to reduce her energy consumption by half while automatically optimizing her cycling technique. We kept a moderate pace, balancing our energy distribution while allowing the rest of the team with varying physical limits to barely keep up. Within minutes, I was completely soaked in sweat. Thankfully, we had paved roads and bicycles. Without them, no human could walk for more than 10 minutes in this heat. I recalled news reports of tourists perishing in the Lop Nur Desert on Earth, where the furthest person barely walked 5 kilometers before dying from dehydration. Modern humans regularly overestimate their endurance and underestimate nature. We were facing an even more terrifying alien desert. Half an hour later, the environment began taking its toll. Bicycles wobbled, and a girl with a weaker constitution fainted from severe heat stroke. I quickly called for our healer Tong Yan to treat her, while Leng Qiu sprayed water to help her recover. The combination of healing and water creation was nothing short of godlike, reviving the girl in seconds, though the repeated drain on their abilities left both Leng Qiu and Tong Yan exhausted. As the wind picked up, filling the air with biting dust, Leng Qiu looked at my disheveled face and her own sweat-drenched, dust-covered stockings. She tore off a long strip from her thigh and offered it to me as a face mask. I tied it around my face without hesitation, sprinkling a little water on it to filter out sand and cool the scalding air. Seeing how well it worked, Leng Qiu tore up the rest of her stockings to make masks for the other frontrunners and Tong Yan. When Leng Qiu offered a mask to Luo Bing, the yoga teacher smiled mysteriously and declined, stating she had her own. Under our bewildered gazes, Luo Bing reached into her waistband and pulled out a thin pair of light-colored lace panties. She calmly slipped them over her head, adjusted them to cover her mouth and nose, and sprinkled water on top. I stared in silent disbelief before giving her a thumbs up for the most practical use of underwear I had ever seen. Inspired by them, the remaining women tore up their stockings or used lightweight undergarments, instantly covering half the team's faces in colorful fabrics as survival completely triumphed over shyness. Luo Bing pedaled alongside me, chuckling through her mask as she explained that the breathable, hygienic fabric of women's undergarments was ideal for preventing infections in extreme heat. Exhaustion soon silenced us again as we pushed through the relentless environment. An hour later, my throat felt like it was on fire and my head throbbed. Sweating profusely only left white salt crusts on my skin as the moisture evaporated instantly. The system interface showed the desert temperature hitting 45 degrees Celsius, with ground temperatures reaching 51 degrees. Despite the unbearable conditions, Tong Yan and Leng Qiu kept everyone alive, miraculously preventing anyone from falling behind even after several people fainted along the way. As weeping and groans of pain began spreading through the line, I used my talent to check the distance ahead. I announced loudly that my hints showed an oasis just 5 kilometers away, giving the hopeless crowd a desperate second wind. 20 minutes later, I pushed my exhausted body up a long incline. Looking down the slope, a breathtaking patch of greenery surrounded a sapphire-like lake, encircled by drought-resistant shrubs and crooked palm trees offering precious shade. Joyful cheers erupted behind me as the women mustered their last bit of strength to rush toward the water, but I immediately threw my arms out and screamed for everyone to stop. As they halted in confusion, my S-rank talent flashed a warning box directly above the alluring oasis. The miniature oasis contained fresh water, food, stone, wood, and vehicle upgrade parts. However, lurking beneath the sand near the water's edge was a desert mummy with the physical strength of an adult male and claws carrying a paralyzing corpse poison. Leng Qiu suggested taking a long detour, but someone immediately pointed out that circumventing the small oasis would take us right into the sand where the monster might be lurking anyway. Songya added weakly that she was barefoot and could not walk on the blistering sand. Fighting was our only option. The crowd turned to me, so I stepped up without hesitation. Since the threat possessed the combat strength of a single male fighter, eliminating it was necessary for our safety. However, I needed a small strike team to support me rather than fighting alone. When I called for volunteers, the crowd fell silent in fear. Tong Yan bravely raised her hand first, but at under 5 feet tall and as our sole healer, I ordered her to stay in the back where she would be safe. Lori stepped forward next, noting that her speed enhancement was our only combat talent. Luo Bing and Leng Qiu offered to join since they still had energy, while Song Ya agreed to lend her passive luck aura if someone provided her with shoes. I took the lead, supported by Leng Qiu, Lori, and Luo Bing, with Song Ya and Tong Yan providing back-end support. I instructed the rest of the women to follow behind so we could all overwhelm the creature together once I pinned it down. After taking a brief rest, we approached the sandy stretch lying between the road and the lake. Although my talent did not pinpoint the exact location, I refused to walk blindly into an ambush. I summoned 2 women with enhanced hearing and smell talents to scout ahead. Moving slowly along the edge, the girl with enhanced hearing pressed a shoe into the sand and caught a faint rustling sound beneath the surface. As we shifted, the sound moved closer, confirming the monster was tracking us underground. With its position localized, Lori volunteered to act as bait, walking back and forth along the boundary. The trick worked, but despite her speed and our warnings, Lori reacted a split second too late. A withered, desiccated hand burst from the sand and locked onto her calf, sending her screaming in panic. I rushed forward, grabbing Lori and pulling her back to drag the entire mummy out of the yellow sand. Using a heavy high heel as an improvised weapon, I slammed the hard metal heel directly into its shriveled skull. The blow pierced its head, but the creature refused to let go, snapping its jaws toward Lori. I panicked, smashing the shoe harder until it snapped in half, then kicked at the monster as Leng Qiu yelled for everyone to charge. The surrounding women rushed in, unleashing a flurry of desperate kicks that completely stomped the monster to pieces. Even with its head crushed, the monster's severed hand remained clamped onto Lori's leg. I pried the fingers open, revealing a black, rotting handprint oozing dark blood. The corpse poison acted fast, stiffening Lori's body and causing her to ramble incoherently about dying without ever having a boyfriend. She grabbed my hand, begging for a kiss before her time ran out. I looked at her with a dark face, muttering that the toxin apparently forced people to speak their mind, and assured her she was fine. Tong Yan immediately touched the wound and cast her healing talent, instantly neutralizing the poison. Lori blinked in confusion, returning to normal and assuming she had only called out for help. Tong Yan asked if she remembered her wild confession, but Lori looked completely bewildered. Breathing a deep sigh of relief, she sincerely thanked Tong Yan and the rest of the group for saving her life. Lori appeared calm throughout, though I knew we could not afford to be unsettled. She felt so ashamed of her recent unusual sexually repressed outburst that she wanted to burst or faint, particularly when looking at me, though she likely blamed it on the mummified corpse toxins. Fortunately, everyone was overwhelmed by the joy of reaching the oasis, so no one questioned her behavior further. Once I confirmed she was fine, everyone rushed toward the central lake. I accelerated my run-up and leaped straight into the crystal-clear fresh water. I immediately started gulping it down. Although Leng Qiu had provided limited fresh water along our journey, we had all been deeply thirsty. As the cool water rushed down my parched throat, the relief was indescribable. After drinking my fill, I comfortably lay down under the shade of a tree by the shore, while the others either soaked in the water or lay exhausted nearby. Tong Yan lay next to me, her soaked clothes clinging to her body and outlining her figure. When I turned my head, I saw a patch of her snow-white skin. She turned at that exact moment, our eyes met, and her face flushed with slight embarrassment. Adjusting her clothes, she softly thanked me for giving her the A-level talent, explaining that as an ordinary, timid person without special skills, she would have struggled in the team without it. I smiled and told her she was the most suitable choice. She shook her head, insisting that her physical strength was only average, and that she could never have competed with me in the initial contest, nor could she have beaten out another attractive girl, who also had 20 points of spiritual power. She expressed deep gratitude for my trust and vowed to repay me. I casually replied that we were in the same boat, so mutual help and trust among friends benefited everyone. Before she could say more, Leng Qiu stood up nearby and urged everyone to quickly pack up, gather resources, and prepare to move before the monster caught up. Looking across the compact oasis, I quickly stood up and shouted for everyone to freeze so Song Ya could locate the resources. The group agreed, calling her our lucky star and directing her to an abandoned tent nearly buried in yellow sand. Songya walked over wearing my long coat without pants or shoes. Exhausted, she simply knelt in the sand and opened the tent while everyone watched in silence. As she inventoried the contents, low cheers erupted with every item pulled out, reaching a peak when she retrieved a full case of canned cola. Sugar was a vital strategic resource for quick energy and survival. She stumbled while trying to lift a heavy iron ingot, prompting others to assist her. Tong Yan touched the metal and excitedly noted it could upgrade our bicycles. Working together, the group quickly unpacked everything and stacked the plentiful harvest under the trees. 150 bottles of Runtian mineral water, 100 cans of Ganju brand fish, 5 cases of canned Coca-Cola, 50 chicken ham sausages, 20 crude iron ingots, 2 rolls of copper wire totaling approximately 10 meters, 2 boxes of basic parts, 2 lithium batteries, 2 walkie-talkies, 1 hand axe, 1 pickaxe, and 1 dagger. When I touched an iron ingot, a prompt appeared in my mind explaining that placing upgrade materials next to equipment allowed for various flexible enhancement options. Relieved by the thought of making bicycle riding easier, I placed an ingot next to my bike. A prompt asked if I wished to use it to increase sturdiness and durability. Wanting more options, I followed the mental tutorial and focused on the bike. The parts glowed in my vision, allowing me to isolate specific components while the rest faded into transparency. Options ranged from replacing gears for lower friction and adding larger, puncture-resistant tires, to expanding the frame into a tricycle, or adding lithium batteries for power assistance. Realizing that limited resources made every choice crucial for surviving the pursuing monsters, I listened as Tong Yan approached and noted that choosing the wrong upgrade path could permanently hinder us. Agreeing with her, I asked her to tell the team not to waste resources so we could study the options together. As I settled my mind, a notification listed 22 possible upgrade paths for my personal bicycle, detailing the trade-offs for motivation, loading capacity, protection, attack, or hybrid setups like power combined with load capacity. This invaluable guide meant I could select the precise enhancements I needed without taking costly detours. Seeing those notifications, I knew I was safe and immediately felt at ease. Relaxing on the shore, I popped open a can of cold Coke, taking a big first gulp as the fizzy carbonation and sweet sugar cleared my mind, allowing me to carefully analyze the 22 upgrade paths. I quickly discarded the single characteristic routes, realizing that focusing solely on power would leave us vulnerable to heat stroke without protection, while focusing only on defense would slow us down. Pursuing a balanced combination of power, load, defense, and attack was the ultimate solution, provided resources allowed. After much thought, I settled on an ambitious concept, the fusion upgrade route. This path involved merging multiple bicycles into a large multi-person vehicle, similar to those found in scenic parks. Combining our bikes would maximize efficiency, save resources, and allow the team to advance together with superior range and speed. The only risk was that irreversible modifications meant a single major breakdown could leave us all stranded. Looking over at Songya as she dug around the oasis, I felt confident that her incredible luck would protect our shared vehicle. By merging everything into one frame, her fortune would cover the whole team instead of just herself, especially if she sat right next to me. Furthermore, pairing the setup with Luo Bing, who possessed a passive skill that cut driving energy consumption in half, meant the entire team would benefit from her stamina boost. I decided right then to unite all 50 of us into a single fleet. The immediate problem was resource scarcity. Merging 50 bicycles required 40 iron ingots, but we only had 20. I considered combining 25 bikes first and having the rest of the team ride unupgraded bikes, but that felt deeply unfair and threatened team morale. Leaving half the crew behind on basic bikes would breed resentment, and I knew I would hate it if the roles were reversed. Yet survival required firm decisions, and I was prepared to establish a shift rotation system to keep things equitable. Just as I was weighing my options, Songya clattered over in borrowed shoes that were far too big for her. She leaned in with a mischievous smile and quietly revealed that she had uncovered a deeply buried hidden resource cache. My eyes widened when she smugly announced that it contained 40 crude iron ingots alongside mining tools. I burst out laughing and gave her an enthusiastic thumbs up, praising her as our true lucky charm. The exact resources I needed had appeared out of thin air, eliminating any need for unfair compromises. She blushed, explaining that Tong Yan had suggested she wander around the oasis, leading her to stumble upon an old buried tent at the sandy edge. Excitedly, I stood up to inspect the stash, promising to share some good news on the way. Before we could step forward, Songya gasped as her foot slipped, causing her to lose balance and fall onto the scorching sand, which easily exceeded 50 degrees Celsius. She winced as the heat stung her bare legs, tears instantly welling in her eyes. I quickly reached down to pull her up, but her left ankle collapsed immediately under her weight. Catching her around the waist, I noticed her ankle was already red and visibly swollen. Exhaustion and oversized footwear had clearly caused a severe sprain. Frustrated, she muttered about how her luck could fail her on flat ground, blushing as she realized she was leaning heavily against me. Unable to put any pressure on her foot, she shyly asked if I could carry her back. I lifted her smoothly, supporting her back and thighs. She was surprisingly light, with a healthy, fit frame, and a faint scent like osmanthus drifted from her freshly washed skin. To break the awkward silence as I carried her back to the shade, she asked about my good news. I explained my plan to merge our bicycles into a single multi-person vehicle so everyone could take turns resting, and she sighed in relief, agreeing that continuous riding would eventually break our bodies and minds. When I carried her back to the lakeside, Tong Yan looked up from her canned food in complete shock, clearly wondering how we had progressed so quickly in just a few minutes. Songya hurriedly explained her injury, prompting Tong Yan to inspect the severe swelling in disbelief, wondering how someone so lucky could hurt themselves so badly. Nearby, Luo Bing stretched her long legs on the sand and offered a playful smile, wondering aloud if spraining an ankle and being carried back by me was actually just another stroke of incredible luck for Song Ya. Tong Yan froze, looking between Song Ya and me as the thought slowly sank in. Song Ya quickly led me to the low-lying, sheltered area where she found the tent. People were already hauling iron ingots away from the buried site, which turned out to be an old abandoned mining camp complete with discarded campfire piles. Searching nearby sand dunes with Song Ya, we uncovered a hidden mine entrance blocked by a sand-covered wooden door. Peering inside the pitch-black tunnel, a system prompt warned me that it housed a complex network of passages and deadly subterranean creatures, offering only a slim chance at precious gems. Lacking sufficient combat strength, I decisively abandoned the idea of exploring it, taking it as a reminder to look for similar hidden locations once I grew stronger. Each iron ingot was brick-sized, but with our large group working together, all 35 pounds of supplies were quickly cleared and brought to our lakeside shaded spot. Taking stock, we had accumulated 40 iron ingots, 5 pickaxes, 1 sleeping bag, 2 blankets, and 3 flashlights. Gathering everyone together, I announced my plan to use the iron ingots to merge all 50 bicycles into a single multi-person craft, saving resources while allowing us to share passive talents. The women exchanged glances, and one politely requested that we add comfortable seating and a bed for rest, sheepishly explaining that she was on her period and needed temporary relief. I readily agreed, noting our surplus materials. Ling Q teased that as a guy, I would never have considered that with 49 women. Statistically, someone faced that situation every day. Everyone erupted into laughter, breaking the tension as team members excitedly began pitching ideas for hooks, storage, and lighting, while only Wen Ling remained quietly observant at the edge of the crowd. Stepping out onto the concrete road, I initiated the combined upgrade. A bright white light enveloped the lined-up bicycles and iron ingots, fusing them into a massive 25-row, 2-seat-wide super bicycle with individual pedals and footrests for each person. Though steering was limited to the front row, the single open road made handling easy. I then added a metal sunshade canopy overhead, installed 2 metal beds with sleeping bags at the middle and rear, and integrated our 2 lithium batteries, copper wire, basic parts, and 2 iron ingots to create an emergency electric assist motor. Using flashlights and spare parts, I mounted dual headlights for night visibility, then crafted 5 side-mounted storage boxes out of the last 5 iron ingots. Touching the completed craft, the system listed its impressive specs: manual pedaling up to 60 kilometers per hour, emergency electric assist, 50 seats, 5 storage boxes, protective roofing, 2 rest beds, dual headlights, and passive team benefits including a 40% reduction in resource consumption and shared luck from Song Ya. Satisfied that our entire group would now benefit from her fortune, we loaded our supplies and departed our brief paradise. Luo Bing and I took the front row to steer, establishing a smooth system where drivers rotated every half hour and pedaling shifts rotated every other row. The combined vehicle produced less resistance, easily maintaining a steady 30 kilometers per hour. Sitting back as we glided forward, I finally enjoyed my first proper meal in hours, devouring 2 cans of rich black bean fish and half a bottle of Coke. As Luo Bing steered beside me with one hand, Tong Yan reached from behind to hand-feed me a peeled sausage bite by bite. With reliable teammates and shared burdens, the journey ahead suddenly felt far more manageable. A moment later, the young guy behind me passed forward a black walkie-talkie, mentioning that they had figured out how to use it to contact other survival teams. Taking the walkie-talkie Song Ya found at the campsite, I realized it was special equipment capable of long-range communication when it immediately picked up outside signals. Static, heavy breathing, and wind rushed from the speaker. Tong Yan leaned over to show me how to adjust the frequency knob, so I tuned the channel until a fatigued voice came through, asking if Squad 300 was there. I pressed the call button and identified us as Team 341. Listening to the wind and the sound of my chewing, the man expressed surprise that I was eating a sausage while riding. When I confirmed it, he laughed, marveling at my riding skills before proposing a fair trade of information through alternating questions. I asked about their team's talent distribution first. He chuckled, explaining that every team started identically with one random S-rank talent and a mix of lower ranks down to F rank, boasting that he held his team's sole S-rank talent. Moving to his turn, he smugly shared that he had already passed the third stop and asked how I was eating while pedaling. I replied that I was simply sitting in a modified vehicle while others rode. As our exchange continued, I realized he had adopted a ruthless lone wolf strategy, abandoning his team, executing someone, and fleeing with a few high-talent individuals. Traveling light with 50 people's worth of stolen resources, they had rapidly cleared the third station while we were just leaving the second. Turning the volume up so my front row teammates could hear, a heavy silence fell over us as we processed his cold brutality. Still, I used information about our hidden mine to trade for a crucial piece of news. The third station contained a crafting synthesis platform guarded by 5 to 10 mummies, which allowed players to combine similar items into higher-tier equipment. Over 10 minutes passed in quiet discussion when the caller suddenly overheard female voices chatting in our background. He casually mentioned having killed his own female teammate when she tried to steal his mysterious crystal ball, a term that immediately spiked my curiosity. Before I could ask, Luo Bing shouted for everyone to prepare for a sandy bend ahead. Confused, the caller demanded to know how many teammates I had left, and my honest reply that my entire team was still alive set him off. He burst into an angry rant, calling me an idiot and claiming that leading burdens would guarantee my death. Unable to tolerate his insults toward me, Tong Yan snapped, yelling back that he was a lonely, pathetic murderer who would die alone regardless of his gear. Enraged, the man screamed a furious string of profanities and slammed something down, threatening to destroy us once our paths crossed. I immediately cut the power to the walkie-talkie, ending the pointless confrontation. Tong Yan apologized for losing her temper, but I reassured her, while Song Ya thoughtfully observed that extreme panic drives people to dark extremes, making us realize just how much Ye Fei's leadership had spared our group from turning on one another. Leng Qiu brought up the caller's parting threat about all convoys eventually converging onto a single road. I noted that we could verify it through other channels, then swapped seats with Luo Bing so she could take the walkie-talkie while I handled the steering wheel. As she turned the knob through static and muffled voices, we quickly noticed a clear pattern. Every reachable team held a designation starting with the number 3. Teams 302, 333, and 356 all confirmed our theory. The walkie-talkies connected us specifically with convoys bearing similar numbers in the 300 range. We even briefly reconnected with the short-tempered caller from Team 300, who immediately burst into tirades upon hearing female voices again, though Luo Bing calmly clicked the dial to the next channel without flinching. Cross-referencing intelligence from various squads made one critical fact clear. All convoys would converge on the same road at the fourth stop. Squads experienced different weather conditions across the route, and reports of strong winds caught my attention as a dangerous warning sign for lethal, rock-filled desert sandstorms. When Tongyan marveled at how some teams were already at the fourth stop, I reasoned that they used acceleration talents or modified vehicles, though rushing ahead was not necessarily optimal. My strategy was to maximize resources at every site, since keeping a safe distance from pursuing monsters gave us ample time to rest in oases. Rushing forward made sense only for distrustful lone wolves who needed to monopolize supplies before their teammates arrived. An hour later, a system note indicated that the next stop, Ancient Village Ruins, was 20 kilometers away. Tong Yan looked forward to seeing it in half an hour, while Songya pedaled hard and hoped for water to wash off the sticky grime. Even with our rotation system, everyone pedaled at maximum effort to stay ahead of the monsters and buy search time at the next location. I warned Songya that our gradual uphill climb meant higher terrain where lakes and underground rivers were unlikely, so her shower plan would likely fail. Songya had ingeniously altered my oversized coat using a dagger, wrapping strips of fabric around her chest like bandages to stay cool and unhindered, exuding the bold energy of a wilderness adventurer. Many others had adopted similar practical attire, carefully saving discarded cloth for future sun protection. Songya sighed as sweat trickled down her neck, and when she asked how I knew about the terrain, I mentioned my college geology major. I added that based on the clockwise drainage rotation and dust devil eddies, we were likely in the southern hemisphere of an extremely arid planet. Observing the landscape, I noticed the wind growing stronger and small whirlwinds appearing more frequently, marking the third dust devil I had spotted. Realizing a deadly sandstorm might be approaching, I immediately shouted for everyone to slam on the brakes, leaving long black skid marks on the road. I jumped out, calling over teammates with enhanced vision and hearing to scan the horizon and listen for wind. Inspecting the small wind-sculpted sand dunes, I identified the main wind direction and instructed everyone to watch that side closely. A cool breeze swept past, and checking my status menu revealed the desert temperature had dropped from 49 to 47 degrees Celsius. Knowing that sudden drops in temperature and air pressure signaled an approaching storm, I ordered everyone back onto the vehicle to sprint at full speed toward shelter. All 50 of us slammed on the pedals simultaneously, sending the super bicycle surging forward. Managing steering at high speed fell heavily on Luo Bing and me, as any slight misstep risked flipping the entire vehicle. After 5 minutes of intense sprinting, our eagle-eyed teammate panicked, screaming that a massive dark wall like a mountain was pressing down on the distant sky. I yelled back for everyone to stay calm and push through at full power toward the upcoming ruins, assuring them that even broken walls or dilapidated houses would provide enough cover to survive the storm. Cracking sounds filled the air as the wind picked up rapidly, whipping fine sand against our vehicle with a dense, pounding rhythm. Even without warnings from our gifted teammates, I could hear the deep, thunderous roar of the approaching storm. Darkness fell swiftly across the sky while an eerie, suffocating pressure settled over us as the air pressure plummeted. The sheer scale of this desert storm far exceeded anything on Earth, sending a chill through my heart and making me wish I could pedal fast enough to fly. Yet I had to maintain absolute control over our direction, knowing that losing control for even a second would doom everyone. We only managed to keep our high speed because Luo Bing exercised full control over our handling, steering us through the flying debris and blurring visibility where any normal driver would have flipped. Sand scraped across our exposed skin like small blades. Behind me, Tongyan cried out as gravel struck her, yet she only groaned and continued pedaling with all her strength. I slammed on the pedals while fighting to hold the wheel steady, keeping the super bicycle hurtling forward on the razor-thin edge of control. Just as the storm threatened to overwhelm us, Luo Bing shouted that we were almost there. Through the swirling dust, the vague outlines of dilapidated earthen walls and withered trees appeared. Focusing my gaze, system hints revealed that these abandoned village ruins contained wood, stone, rare items, and upgrade parts, with 2 desert mummies guarding a central shop. Relieved that the mummies were stationed deeper inside rather than at the perimeter, I swerved our vehicle off the road and plunged through the 100 meters of soft yellow sand separating us from the ruins. I yelled for everyone to hold on tight as the tires sank into the deep sand, bringing us to a sudden stop. Everyone scrambled off and sprinted toward the crumbling walls for shelter. After running 15 meters, I heard anxious cries behind me and turned to see my heart sink. Tongyan and Songya were still trapped by the car, while a towering wall of sand approached at terrifying speed. Refusing to abandon loyal teammates, I gritted my teeth and charged back into the blinding gale. I found Songya screaming in frustration as she tried in vain to drag Tongyan, whose body had gone stiff and slow. Recognizing the dark blood seeping from a fresh wound on Tongyan's left thigh, I realized with fury that someone in our team had secretly poisoned her with mummified corpse toxins during the chaos. Tongyan was weakly casting a healing spell on herself, her palm glowing with faint white light. Knowing the treatment required precious seconds we did not have, I instructed Songya to run ahead while I scooped Tongyan into my arms and sprinted toward the broken wall. A terrifying gust swallowed us in chaotic yellow dust, instantly obscuring Songya from view. Fortunately, a firm hand reached out through the storm and grabbed my clothes, guiding me safely behind the wall. I laid Tongyan against the structure and threw my body over hers to shield her completely, just as a torrential downpour of sand and gravel slammed into the barrier above us. Safe beneath me, Tongyan paused her spell, her pale face flushing slightly as she relaxed against my chest amid the roaring storm. When the earth-shattering roar finally subsided, I struggled to sit up and gasped from intense pain. Adrenaline faded to reveal fine bloodstains covering my arms and chest, while a burning sensation across my back signaled even worse injuries from the airborne debris. Looking around, I saw our dust-covered teammates nursing their own minor wounds, while a withered tree trunk near the entrance stood embedded with sharp stones like a hedgehog. Realizing how close we had come to perishing, I accepted further healing from Tongyan before calling over my most trusted allies, the 5 girls with higher-tier talents. I sent Lori to fetch an axe while Leng Chu, Songya, and Luo Bing gathered everyone to take a head count. Though all 50 members were accounted for, a tense atmosphere hung over the group. Songya voiced her anger, revealing that a traitor among us had intentionally poisoned Tongyan to leave her behind. I looked over the crowd and coldly demanded that the culprit step forward, but no one moved. Turning to the girl with the enhanced sense of smell, I signaled for her to inspect everyone. She walked down the line and hesitated briefly in front of Leng Chu before pointing directly at her. Surprised by the accusation against a talented and cooperative member, the group watched in shock as 2 teammates searched Leng Chu's pockets, pulling out a cloth-wrapped fragment of a mummified finger still stained with fresh blood. Disgusted and enraged by the clear evidence, Lori picked up the axe. Could it really be her? She was sitting right behind Tongyan, so it's entirely possible. The crowd began to murmur, shifting their gazes toward Ling Chu. She remained calm, meeting my eyes directly and assuring me that I knew she had no reason to do something so foolish. I nodded in agreement. I hadn't doubted her for a second. Even though her position directly behind Tong Yan gave her the perfect opportunity to swipe at her during the chaos, I knew she was far too intelligent to keep the murder weapon in her pocket after seeing Tong Yan survive. It was far more likely that the true culprit slipped the mummified finger into her pocket during the commotion. Looking at the crowd, a system notification popped up in my vision confirming my suspicion. The murderer who attempted to kill Tong Yan was Wen Ling. It was the same woman who had consistently opposed me. I thought she had finally settled down, but she was like a venomous snake biding her time for the perfect strike. It truly was an ideal opportunity. If Song Ya hadn't been lucky enough to find Tong Yan, she would have died in the sandstorm. With our only healer gone, the corpse poison would have been untreatable, leaving me vulnerable as her next target. My eyes grew colder at the thought as I took the axe from Lori, stepping forward to speak in a low voice that carried across the silence, ordering Wen Ling to step forward. The crowd instinctively parted, leaving her exposed at the back. She immediately shouted that it wasn't her, feigning grief and indignation while accusing me of staging the assassination just to eliminate dissent. Without attempting a logical defense, she pointed at Tong Yan and shrilly noted that her skin remained smooth and clean, lacking the wind and sand damage the rest of us suffered. She claimed Tong Yan was receiving preferential treatment, while the rest did the hard work, suggesting she was helping me purge anyone who refused to obey. A few people hesitated, noting that Tong Yan did look unusually clean compared to our disheveled state, and while no one wanted to believe I would orchestrate such a thing, the instinctive fear of being manipulated made them waver. Sensing the hesitation, Wen Ling's voice grew even more inflammatory as she warned them to stay calm. She claimed I could invent any reason to kill her today and anyone else tomorrow without evidence. She dismissed my hint talent as charlatanism, arguing that I could declare black was white and force them to march to their deaths. Appealing directly to the women, she insisted my specialty was large-scale purges, calling it typical male behavior and power. Straightening her back, she appeared fiercely determined to fight, ironically putting me on trial for abusing my authority. Watching her performance, I found it absurd and laughable. She was still clinging to the rules of our past world, believing she could distort reality through emotional incitement, moral blackmail, and manipulative rhetoric. She completely misunderstood the essence of power, which never stemmed from words or status, but from control over violence, the ability to inspire fear, and the capacity to provide benefits. Her tactics only worked in peacetime when there were societal rules and loopholes to exploit. Now I could execute her without any justification. Did she really think all my careful planning and grueling effort along this journey was simply to play the good guy? Tong Yan trembled with rage beside me, cursing Wen Ling for her shamelessness. She reminded Wen Ling that she had saved her earlier, and that Ling Chu had given her water, demanding to know how she could be so monstrous as to try and kill her in return. Tong Yan was genuinely heartbroken. She had believed that kindness and cooperation were enough to survive this desperate situation without descending into the horrific infighting that consumed other teams. Wen Ling paled, but immediately fell to her knees, crying and adopting a deeply aggrieved expression. She begged Tong Yan to have a conscience and stop helping me frame her, sobbing that she had worked tirelessly without complaint. Looking around tearfully, she pleaded with the group, asking if she looked like someone capable of such a thing. Her tears were so convincing that some softer-hearted members began to feel sorry for her. Tong Yan wavered for a fraction of a second, her simple nature struggling against the display, before shaking her head vigorously. She knew I was reliable, and if I said it was Wen Ling, it was the truth. Cursing her as a viper and a brilliant actor, Tong Yan's eyes reddened with anger, though she didn't know how to formally expose her. I felt gratified seeing Tong Yan's unwavering trust, but I didn't rush to deal with Wen Ling. As the de facto leader with a loyal core, I had a million ways to kill her. This incident proved there were still toxic elements in our team, which wasn't surprising given human nature, but I hadn't had time to thoroughly vet everyone at the start. Now, I had the perfect opportunity to observe everyone's true colors. Glancing around, it was clear the majority stood firmly with me. A tall girl stepped forward first, her voice ringing out as she told Wen Ling to stop acting, declaring that slandering me meant going against her directly. Another girl added with a trembling voice that, without my leadership, we all would have died in the sandstorm, cursing Wen Ling as a heartless wretch who deserved to die. Everyone had witnessed my actions. Even without my hints, I had just saved their lives, proving my true intentions. A short-haired girl with a fiery temper couldn't hold back and rushed forward, slapping Wen Ling hard across the face. She yelled that I was the one doing the heavy lifting, and that Tong Yan, Luo Bing, and Ling Chu were the true pillars of the team, while Wen Ling only stirred up trouble with malicious intent. Stunned by the slap, Wen Ling couldn't comprehend how quickly the entire group had sided with me. Covering her face, she muttered with trembling lips that we were despicable people who only bullied the weak, warning us that we would regret this. Just then, Leng Qiu, who had been silent until now, spoke up to address the crowd with a clear and calm voice. She suggested analyzing the entire matter logically from beginning to end, rather than making wild guesses driven by emotion. Everyone immediately turned to look at me, and I gave her a firm nod of approval. Continuing her thought, Leng Qiu pointed out that the finger pulled from her pocket had fresh blood on it, proving that someone had indeed been cut. She looked over at me and asked me to explain the exact details of how I saved Tong Yan during the storm. I nodded and carefully recounted the entire rescue process to the group. After listening, Leng Qiu calmly summarized the facts, pointing out that after Tong Yan was injured, I had carried her horizontally. My left hand supported her back while my right hand wrapped around her legs, placing her wounded left thigh right against my right forearm. She walked over and gestured for me to raise my right arm, revealing a dark stain on the inside of my sleeve. She pointed out that the black blood came directly from Tong Yan's wound while I was carrying her to safety. This proved beyond doubt that Tong Yan had been targeted and that my account was entirely true, as no one would risk their life for a fabrication. Furthermore, Tong Yan's clean appearance was simply the result of her healing spell and my protection shielding her from the dust. Her analysis was so detailed and logical that everyone nodded in complete agreement. Seeing her speak so calmly and guide the group's focus so masterfully made me hold Leng Qiu in even higher regard. Listening to the explanation, Wen Ling's face stiffened, though she weakly argued that this still did not prove her guilt. Leng Qiu turned her gaze toward her and coldly stated that she was explaining the facts to ensure no one harbored resentment, but mostly because she refused to upset me or Tong Yan. Quoting Lu Xun, she reminded everyone that those who carry firewood for the masses should not be left to freeze in the snow, declaring that I earned and deserved absolute respect. Then her eyes turned icy as she asked Wenling why she thought anyone needed to prove her guilt at all. When Wenling froze, Leng Qiu's tone dropped to a chilling whisper, asking why she should bother explaining anything in the middle of an apocalypse as if she were still at work. Suddenly drawing a dagger from her waist, her calm demeanor vanished into violent rage. She told the woman to beg for mercy and threatened to tear her gossip-filled mouth apart. Before she even finished speaking, she charged forward with her blade. Terrified, Wenling stood frozen until the dagger slashed a bloody mark across her face, causing her to scream and turn to run. She only managed 2 steps before Leng Qiu drove a second knife deep into her lower back. Staggering in agony and blind panic, Wenling fled into the central ruins of the village. As she tried to navigate the broken terrain, 2 emaciated figures emerged from behind a collapsing wall. They were the 2 desert mummies guarding the relics. By the time the rest of us caught up and killed the creatures, they had already mauled and poisoned Wenling to death. Seeing Wenling's mutilated body with her organs spilled across the ground, Tong Yan immediately doubled over and vomited. Her reaction seemed to trigger a chain reaction, and sounds of retching echoed through our ranks. Yet Leng Qiu loudly commanded everyone to step forward and look closely, insisting we needed to get used to corpses and the reality of the apocalypse. Looking at the grotesque scene, I felt a wave of nausea as the thick stench of blood and internal organs hit my nose. I forced myself to look away, which eased the discomfort slightly. Turning around, I noticed that Leng Qiu hadn't vomited either, and praised her for remaining so composed. Hearing my compliment, she slowly turned her head toward me and instantly threw up right onto my shirt. Completely losing my composure, I gagged and slapped her across the shoulder in pure retaliation, causing both of us to double over and vomit violently into the sand. Having eaten heavily before engaging in intense physical exertion, my stomach emptied completely, and I could vividly distinguish pieces of fish and apples in the mess. Looking up, I gasped when I saw a whole undigested corn kernel stuck to the tip of Leng Qiu's nose, clearly blasted there when I retaliated. Despite the revolting situation, the sheer absurdity of it struck me, and I burst out laughing. Leng Qiu glared at me, caught between anger and amusement, before doubling over again. I finished first, grabbing my water bottle to gulp down several mouthfuls and rinse the sour taste from my mouth. Decisively stripping off my filthy shirt, I sat down in the sand and began scrubbing my skin with fine grains. Dry sand worked wonders, quickly absorbing the wet residue and rubbing off cleanly without wasting precious water. Seeing my success, Leng Qiu turned her back to the group and began scrubbing her own clothes using the same method. Once clean, I shook out my shirt and put it back on, feeling instantly revived as the sour odor faded. Taking a few deep breaths, I calmly stepped past Wenling's body toward the adjacent stone building. Leng Qiu was right about death. Avoiding it was useless, and exposing ourselves to it now would prepare us for the brutal realities ahead. This particular shop was the only sturdy structure in the village still intact, built from massive granite blocks. Stepping inside, the front room appeared to be a storefront lined with empty display cases and a few stray bottles on the floor. I didn't linger there, leaving the gathering to Songya. Collecting supplies was her specialty, as her extraordinary luck often turned seemingly empty bottles into precious medicine. Her luck was also the reason we only faced 2 mummies instead of the 5 or more that other teams typically encountered. Taking her along was easily one of my best decisions, as her presence significantly lowered the danger for our entire group. Walking into the inner room, I immediately spotted the ancient structure I had been searching for. Standing before me was a hexagonal stone platform, roughly 1 meter tall and half a meter wide, its smooth marble surface gleaming with a soft grayish-white sheen in the dim light. My eyes lit up as I stepped forward and pressed my palm against the surface of the ancient stone platform. Clear text immediately flashed across my mind, congratulating me on discovering a divine artifact known as the synthesis table, which could craft equipment and materials if given the right blueprints. Excited by its potential, I realized this discovery would finally allow our entire team to produce our own tools and gear. Recalling fragmented tips from the walkie-talkie channel, I grabbed a fist-sized rough stone from a corner and an arm-length piece of dead wood. I laid them side by side on the platform's edge, took a deep breath, and pressed my hand onto the marble surface. The platform trembled with a soft hum as a milky white halo rippled outward from the center, enveloping the materials. Concentrating my mind, I mentally selected the stone and wood and willed them to merge. The glowing halo contracted, causing the materials to float, rotate, and fuse together under an invisible force. As the blinding light slowly faded, a simple stone hand axe lay quietly in the center of the table. The sharp stone blade was cleverly embedded into a groove at the end of the smooth, naturally curved wooden handle. Picking up the heavy weapon, I took a trial swing that cut through the air with a faint whistle. I tested it against a piece of dry wood, chopping a deep mark, though the stone blade visibly chipped in the process. While its durability was questionable, it was functional. Songya entered with a few teammates to search the ruins, her eyes widening in excitement as she recognized the synthesizer. She weighed the axe in her hand and suggested making several for everyone to throw at mummies. Laughing softly, I told her throwing axes required too much skill, whereas crafting 3-meter-long spears would give ordinary people the reach needed to handle groups of mummies effectively. I then rallied 5 girls to help me haul the heavy synthesizer out to our vehicle. Weighing 500 or 600 pounds, the awkward stone platform took immense effort to move outside. Meanwhile, Leng Qiu had guided the group in digging our super bicycle out of the sand, but the situation was grim. The metal canopy had been completely destroyed by the storm, leaving us fully exposed to the brutal desert sun. Looking up, I realized with growing unease that the sun had remained directly overhead for far too long without moving westward. Checking our status, I saw the air temperature had climbed to 52 degrees Celsius, with ground temperatures reaching 59, and our team size was now at 49 members. The afternoon heat was projected to reach 55 degrees, making it impossible to ride without shade or even touch the scorching metal frame. Suddenly, a loud bang echoed through the air as one of the tires exploded from the extreme heat. I shouted for everyone to deflate the remaining tires immediately to prevent further bursts. Luobing worriedly pointed out that the hot road surface would destroy the rubber tires completely. But I reassured her that we could still ride on the bare metal rims if necessary, though the ride would be far bumpier. The lack of a sunshade remained our most critical threat. Leng Qiu suggested using our new axe to cut down local trees and gather timber to build wooden roofs. Agreeing that speed was essential, I instructed the team to distribute tools, fell trees, and collect all usable timber from the village. Touching the bicycle, I confirmed that a roof could be added by consuming raw wood, but the system required a ridiculously massive pile of timber for a single canopy. When someone carried wooden display shelves out of the store, I noticed a single piece of processed furniture wood could craft an entire canopy. Upgrading directly with raw timber wasted 3 times more resources than using processed planks, an inefficiency we couldn't afford. Stepping over to the synthesizer in the shade, I activated it and placed a piece of raw wood onto the surface to test plank creation. The white light enveloped the timber and faded seconds later, leaving behind only a small, rough, irregularly shaped plank that was barely usable. Analyzing the poor result, I realized my combination was incorrect. Based on walkie-talkie reports, the table required specific synthesis formulas and exact material ratios to produce high-quality items properly. The synthesis table was less flexible than human machinery, operating more like a mysterious transmutation device bound by strict rules. To use it efficiently required exact formulas, which normally demanded endless trial and error to discover. Just as I pondered this limitation, a system notification appeared before my eyes, displaying a complete list of items I could craft with our current supplies. I saw exact recipes for stone axes, stone spears, planks, upgraded walkie-talkies, and reinforced iron pickaxes. Being able to see every formula directly eliminated any risk of wasting our hard-won materials. Loading 2 pieces of wood onto the platform, a rich white light flared, leaving behind a smooth, standard wooden plank that was perfectly sized for our bicycle canopy. I immediately called over Zhang Qian, the girl possessing the engineer talent, and assigned her to manage the station. She nodded excitedly, explaining that operating the device would build her proficiency, raise her talent level, and potentially yield double outputs. When she nervously mentioned the high resource cost of guessing unknown formulas, I handed her a wooden board where I had engraved over a dozen exact recipes. Stunned by the list, she looked at me with flushed cheeks, feeling valued yet quietly melancholic that my foresight left little room for her talent to shine. Leaving her to her work, I knew she would work even harder to prove her worth to the team. Joining the logging effort, I used one of the iron axes we found at the oasis to fell the dense dead trees. Beside me, a girl with a gathering talent worked at an impressive pace, frequently triggering extra harvests that doubled or tripled her timber yields. Recognizing that her talent thrived in a supported team environment, I handed her my half-cut tree to maximize our gains while I toured the ruins to inspect everyone's progress. I chatted briefly with the members who had backed me earlier, realizing that while capability was useful, loyalty and emotional stability were the true non-negotiable traits for my core team. Half an hour later, Songya returned from her search with a rich haul, including a wrench, iodine, alcohol, 3 steel knives, iron ingots, and spare parts. Touching the synthesizer revealed powerful new formulas, including one for Molotov cocktails that would ignite instantly on the scorching desert ground. Songya then leaned in and whispered that she had spotted a hidden compartment in the basement, but had kept quiet due to the crowd. Realizing her incredible luck talent was guiding her instincts, I told her to trust her gut in the future. Assembling a small team with Tong Yan for healing and Lori for speed, I gave Ling Chu a quick update before we descended into the cellar. Reaching the basement, I checked a hollow-sounding section of the floor, triggering a system notification about a secret cellar built for illicit dealings. It warned of a trapped mummy, corpses, and hidden treasures, noting that the release mechanism was hidden behind a brick at the entrance. I pulled the concealed iron chain, causing the floor to slide open with a heavy click, releasing a foul stench of decay and dust. Noticing a faint glow below, Lori instinctively stepped forward, but I stopped her and sent Songya down the narrow steps first, joking that her uncanny luck made her immune to fatal traps. The 4 of us descended the stone steps into the dark, cramped space. Scanning the room with a flashlight, the 3 girls gasped and crowded close to me as the beam illuminated a desiccated corpse with a torn abdomen lying across a wooden table. In the shadows stood a rusty iron cage holding a weak, starving mummy that slowly turned its empty eye sockets toward us without roaring. Suspended directly above the cage hung a softly glowing crystal ball, illuminating the hidden chamber with the radiant light of our true treasure. Grasping the crystal ball, a prompt flashed before my eyes announcing I had obtained a mysterious crystal ball, which could be consumed to randomly grant 1 attribute point. My heart skipped a beat at the revelation. Direct attribute points were a massive strategic advantage, making it completely clear why the leader from Team 300 had been so arrogant and secretive about finding one. Holding the crystal ball, Songya sighed softly, realizing why that man had been willing to murder his own teammate for such a precious treasure. Yet I had handed it over to her without a single moment of hesitation. Seeing her smile as she leaned in close to whisper with me, I could tell the gesture deepened her trust in me, bringing a sense of security that no treasure could buy. As the team passed the crystal ball around, a subtle bond forged among us from sharing such an extraordinary secret. Suddenly, a fierce roar echoed from the cage as the mummified corpse thrashing inside became active the moment the crystal ball was moved away. Curious, I held the crystal ball near the bars again, and the creature instantly grew subdued, slowing its movements and stepping back. Removing it triggered another roar while bringing it back restored quiet. Testing it several times confirmed its secondary effect. The artifact could suppress and weaken mummies. While the delay and short range made it impractical for direct combat, its utility was undeniable. I instructed Songya to keep the crystal ball safe for now while we decided who should use it, refusing to keep it solely for myself. Searching the cellar further, Songya made another brilliant discovery, uncovering an old hand-cranked mechanical generator in a dusty corner. Her incredible luck continued to pay off, as this generator solved our lithium battery charging problem and allowed us to run electric motors, dramatically easing the burden on everyone. Looking back at the snarling mummy in the cage, a bold idea began to take shape in my mind. Once we verified the cellar was cleared, we used heavy chains to drag the iron cage back up to the surface, eager to leave behind the suffocating stench of rot. Up on the ground, we met Luo Bing's resource team, who gathered around the caged mummy in a mixture of fear and excitement. I briefly explained our underground findings and reminded them to mentally prepare for cleaning up the ruins. Noticing Songya's hands were empty, I wondered where she had hidden the glowing crystal ball given her minimal outfit. Returning to a shaded spot away from the crowd, I asked her in a low voice. Checking our surroundings carefully, she turned her back, reached 2 fingers inside her chest wrappings, and pulled out the small, smooth sphere. Blushing slightly, she placed it in my hand, explaining she had nowhere else to hide its faint glow when the crowd approached. Holding the warm sphere, I marveled at her ability to move so naturally while concealing it. Lori gasped in shock, giving an envious thumbs up alongside Tong Yan. Examining the crystal ball under the sunlight, it looked like a tiny, mesmerizing galaxy slowly rotating in my palm. As I pondered who should receive it, a system hint popped up revealing this specific ball would grant a +1 to strength. I couldn't help but chuckle softly. While my strength was already at 12 points, making a single extra point a modest gain rather than a dramatic transformation, it clearly indicated who would benefit most. When I shared the hint with the girls, Songya, Tongyan, and Lori all smiled and insisted I take it, arguing that strengthening our main fighter benefited the entire team. Touched by their generosity, I agreed not to stand on ceremony. Instead of consuming it immediately, I wrapped the sphere in cloth and approached the mummy, instantly causing the monster to go still like a wooden dummy. I directed the team to open the cage and bind its limbs securely with chains. Though confused by my instructions, they followed along as I used a crowbar to knock out all its teeth, stuffed a wooden bridle into its jaws to prevent biting, and severed both its hands at the wrists with my axe. Once the creature was completely rendered harmless, we dragged it to the back of our vehicle and secured it between 2 wooden poles attached to the frame. Placed like a harnessed mule behind a person sitting on the bicycle, the mummy instinctively trudged forward, successfully pushing the vehicle a short distance. The ridiculous sight brought a burst of laughter from the crowd, with Lori clutching her stomach in hysterics. Songya looked at me with deep admiration, clearly impressed by my resourcefulness even in such a grim survival scenario. Reaching for the vehicle frame, I touched the metal and began the formal upgrade and modification process. Operating the system interface, I combined the generator, the fixing mechanism attached to the mummy, and a crude iron ingot in a burst of white light. Upgrading our bicycle with these components, a box of basic parts, and the iron ingot yielded a mummy-tracked generator. This setup allowed the mummy's endless marching to turn the generator and continuously charge our lithium battery, boosting our range in motor-assisted mode while enabling kinetic energy recovery during downhill travel. The mechanism was practically a triumph of environmental efficiency, exploiting the mummy's tireless strength, resistance to extreme heat, and lack of need for food or sleep. Rather than worrying about how long the creature would hold out, I resolved to use it until it broke, hoping to replace it with other wild mummies later. Using another iron ingot and spare wood, I transformed an empty bicycle frame into a sturdy loading platform to carry and secure our heavy synthesis table. Meanwhile, Leng Qiu directed another crew to build wooden sunshades above the seats. With a clear division of labor across collecting materials, crafting planks, upgrading, and transport, our 48 members made rapid progress. Yet managing endless inquiries about water rations, minor injuries, and personal issues left my head spinning. Realizing that fielding every individual problem alone was unsustainable, I made a mental note to establish group leaders with clear responsibilities as soon as possible. Once the operation was running smoothly, I finally sat down in the shade and downed half a bottle of water. Songya approached with a bright smile, suggesting that the crystal ball's single strength point might not be fixed if we leveraged her luck. While I initially assumed the artifact's output was set in stone, I realized that for Songya, any unopened outcome remained flexible until experienced. When I praised her idea and asked how I could share her passive aura, she simply laughed and reminded me to let her follow her instincts. Curious, I led her into an empty, ruined house and pulled the glowing crystal ball from my bag. As she stood before me, new system hints immediately appeared, revealing that using the ball while she watched could grant 2 strength points, while a sincere hug offered a chance at 3 points. Most surprisingly, using it under her sincere kiss and blessing offered a chance at up to 5 strength points. The prospect of gaining 5 whole strength points was staggering, as that level of physical power would allow me to dominate threats with my bare hands. However, knowing the boost required her genuine feelings rather than a forced gesture, I explained the hint's conditions to her directly and let her decide. Songya blushed furiously as she processed the options, caught off guard by how quickly her spontaneous idea had escalated. Noticing her panic, I offered to settle for a simple hug so she wouldn't feel pressured. Instead, she straightened up with sudden determination, stood on tiptoe, and planted a quick kiss on my cheek before freezing in embarrassment. Seeing her flustered state, I gently asked if she had managed to focus on a sincere blessing during the sudden rush. Realizing she had been too nervous the first time, she took a deep breath, closed her eyes to wish me well with total sincerity, and slowly pressed a warm, soft kiss to my cheek that lingered for a few seconds. Instantly, the crystal ball in my hand exploded into a dazzling burst of light, dissolving into a shower of starlight that dissolved directly into my body. A notification confirmed I had achieved the perfect effect, gaining a full 5 points of strength. As the sudden surge of power flooded my body, I clenched my fist tightly, tearing my shirt cuff as my arm muscles bulged with powerful, clearly defined lines. Amazingly, as soon as I relaxed my hand, the exaggerated contours softened, leaving my arm slender yet noticeably solid. Lifting my shirt revealed an 8-pack across my abdomen, transformed into a lean, athletic state without looking bulky. Songya stared in awe at the dramatic shift, her eyes widening at my physique before she quickly turned away, blushing as she asked if this was the crystal ball's true power. Stripping off my ruined shirt, I took a trial swing that made the air whistle, noting that while the numerical stat rose by under 50%, my functional strength had more than doubled while completely clearing my fatigue. I thanked Songya sincerely, realizing that her genuine affection and heartfelt kiss had multiplied my reward 5-fold. The knowledge that her feelings were real brought me far greater joy than the attribute boost itself. Leaving the ruined house together, I tested my new physical limits by lifting the heavy stone synthesis platform, managing to lift on my own what previously required 6 people. Over the next hour, our team completed the vehicle's transformation, mounting the generator to the rear, installing the new wooden roof and attaching storage boxes. Following Luo Bing's advice, we combined our 99 original tires into 33 solid composite tires, trading total count for extreme heat resistance that eliminated blowout risks. The extra inner tubes were saved, with one talented marksman even crafting a powerful slingshot from the scrap rubber. Zhang Qian crafted 10 3-meter stone spears on the synthesizer, which I assigned to the 10 strongest girls to form a dedicated vanguard against future mummy attacks. Once everything was packed, I conducted a thorough final inspection around our vehicle, taking immense pride in how our humble shared bicycle had evolved into a massive bus-like transport carrying 49 people. Waving my hand, I called for everyone to board, and the girls cheered as we set off back onto the open road. Looking ahead, a new prompt flashed in my vision, revealing our next stop was an abandoned gas station 215 kilometers away, filling me with anticipation for what we might find. Gas stations were great places to scavenge because they promised gasoline, shops, clothes, fresh water, and food. If I got lucky, I might even spot abandoned vehicles. Finding spare parts to modify and upgrade our bicycle would be absolute perfection, eliminating the sheer hardship of continuous pedaling in a massive qualitative leap. Thinking about luck, I could not help but smile, turning around to look at Songya sitting behind me on my right, before I loudly announced the hint content to everyone. A chorus of cheers echoed through the group. I told everyone to hold on tight as we tried out our new electric motor-assisted propulsion. I reached forward and pressed the simple switch attached to the frame, turning on the motor. It hummed into life with a distinctive pitch, instantly accelerating the entire bicycle and drastically reducing pedal resistance. Since we lacked parts, this basic setup lacked speed regulation, running straight at maximum power with no way to check the battery level. For us, running at all mattered far more than perfect gauges. There were no traffic police out here anyway, so I could drive however I wanted. Battery level indicators on these small scooters were rarely accurate to begin with, as I knew from past experience, and the dropping power output would naturally signal a low charge soon enough. The motor assistance lifted everyone's spirits, filling the vehicle with a joyful atmosphere. That enthusiasm faded fast as the blistering heat wore us down. Sweat drenched every single one of us, making sustained excitement impossible. Waves of scorching heat rolled across the terrain, leaving us desperate to find an oasis just to lie down. I checked the surrounding weather metrics on my attribute display, which showed the temperature peaking at 55 degrees Celsius, while the ground reached 63 degrees. Exposure to such extreme conditions was lethal, representing the absolute upper limit of human tolerance. When the vehicle angled uphill, the sunlight hit my exposed arms and feet, causing a sharp burning sensation. Without our wooden roof, heat stroke would have wiped us out within 10 minutes. Tongyan stood up, touched the ceiling, and exclaimed in surprise that it felt hot enough to catch fire. Leng Qiu, standing right behind her, smiled and told her not to worry because she was still here. Possessing the most water in our team made her the most comfortable person present, though she had to manage her supply strictly, funneling it into bottles to distribute for cooling. Staying hydrated was essential to prevent heat stroke, which would be disastrous if someone fell off the bicycle. Realizing the danger, I quickly ordered the team to tie our collected inner tubes to the seats as crude seatbelts. We had recently upgraded our seats with comfortable wooden backrests, but that extra comfort made it far too easy for a tired or heat-stricken rider to nod off and tumble off at speeds between 35 and 40 kilometers per hour. Sitting up front while driving and securing her seatbelt, Luo Bing complained that her long white legs were ruined and turned dark from the occasional sunlight. Luo Li cheerfully joked that her fair upper body would make people think she was wearing black stockings instead. She optimistically added that 55 degrees was the absolute peak, meaning we had hit rock bottom, and things could only improve from there. I nodded with a smile, relieved that the temperature would not rise further for the time being, as any higher heat would render the bicycle useless without a heavier protective shelter. Then I realized Luo Li was only half right. We had hit bottom, but our path still plunged downward into underground caverns. After we rode for over 50 kilometers, the sun refused to shift and the temperature stayed locked at 55 degrees. Realizing something was wrong, I knew the heat should have dropped as the sun moved west. I admitted out loud that I had miscalculated, noting that afternoons in this world lasted unnaturally long, perhaps for 10 hours or even 10 days at this extreme level. Fortunately, we had prepared well with food, water, and our mummified corpse generating electricity around the clock. To endure the long haul, I revised our riding schedule to a 3-shift rotation. With the motor assisting us, only 16 or 17 of our 49 members needed to pedal at any given time to maintain high speed. This reduced physical exertion, saving food and water, while giving riders an hour of rest for every 30 minutes of pedaling. Uphill and downhill terrain also allowed rapid lithium battery charging, granting even more rest. Dividing 49 people into 3 groups meant we only needed 48 active pedalers, leaving 1 extra slot. Luobing and I shared this designated no-pedal spot since steering demanded extra energy, allowing us to split the brake as needed. While resting, I kept busy by constantly adjusting my walkie-talkie frequency to scout other teams. Turning the knob, I announced Team 341 and asked for a response. An annoyed voice from Squad 300 instantly snapped back, asking if I was still alive. I retorted directly, asking how he had time to adjust frequencies while pedaling hard enough to make his bike smoke. He bragged about riding his tricycle solo and asked how many members I had left. Before I could answer, a new voice named Wang Gang interrupted, warning me not to answer Xu Xiong because that beast was likely planning an ambush. He explained that Xu Xiong and several other teams had murdered their own teammates, warning me that any trade offers were total scams meant to gather intelligence for robbery. Hearing this surprised me greatly, revealing how much had transpired on the channel while I was offline and how notorious Squad 300 had become. I thanked Wang Gang for the reminder and introduced myself as Ye Fei. Expressing gratitude cost nothing, so I offered it freely, believing it was always wise to show kindness. Wang Gang smiled, saying knowing my name was enough. Xu Xiong from Squad 300 sneered, calling others hypocritical monsters who ate people alive. He mocked us all as doomed, promising to wait for us on the main road to claim our goods, before his voice abruptly vanished. I asked Wang Gang if I could trade for some information. He readily agreed, telling me to ask away without needing any trade. I thanked him warmly and inquired about his local temperature and whether he had reached the 4th station. He replied that his temperature was also 55 degrees with the sun overhead. He had not reached the 4th stop yet, but he heard from Team 985 that the distance from the 3rd station to the 4th was over 200 kilometers. Surprised that he could receive messages from the 900 series, I questioned him. He proudly explained that he had synthesized a mobile phone, allowing him to receive messages from all teams numbered from 1 to 1,000. I praised his quick ability to craft a phone, impressed by his resourcefulness. I happened to own 2 walkie-talkies myself, but I had held off on combining them because they were essential for scouting and keeping in touch with my team. Direct phone synthesis seemed less cost-effective for a large group like ours. I asked him if a phone could undergo further synthesis for advanced features, but he admitted he did not know and suggested asking around after reaching the 4th stop. I nodded in agreement. Once we passed the 4th station, all teams starting with the digit 3 would merge onto the same route. Resource competition, robbery, and violence would inevitably explode, making it easy to acquire more walkie-talkies. Cruel individuals like Xu Xiong were clearly eager for the chaos, constantly treating doom and destruction as a given. Wang Gang warned me earnestly to watch out for Xu Xiong, analyzing that his talent was likely combat-focused, making him a deadly individual fighter with a bike heavily modified for violence. He advised me to slow down and avoid rushing to the 4th stop, so I would not run into Xu Xiong, who would not wait around forever. He suggested setting off only when the monsters behind were closing in, stressing that saving my own life mattered more than working hard just to enrich a robber. I wholeheartedly agreed and promised to consider his advice carefully. I refrained from boasting about our team size or combat power. Team 341 had more members skilled in basic survival than in fighting. Even with my attribute bonuses making me strong, combat specialists could still hold an edge, so I could not afford to drop my guard or lose our hard-earned resources. My original plan already involved staying at each station as long as possible to rest, gather supplies, and upgrade our vehicles. Following this slow, deliberate pace meant we would likely be the last to travel, but our team remained in the best overall shape, with even our weakest members holding up well. We continued chatting, and I gathered several useful insights. Wang Gong held an S-level talent and led a sizable team himself. He was the original source of the fourth station intelligence, which Shuxiang had arrogantly tried to trade away. I also learned that each team encountered vastly different stops based on pure luck, ranging from resource-rich oases to stripped, abandoned camps. Suddenly, Wang Gong laughed with relief and announced that Shuxiang had finally left the channel. He offered to share some exclusive information, which immediately caught my interest. He revealed that his phone screen allowed him to monitor the online status of every channel starting with 3, showing exactly where active teams were located. While his previous advice was genuine, his main intention had been to mislead Shuxiang. He noted that since we shared the same path forward, Shuxiang remained a threat who would plunder the best resources ahead unless we took the initiative. Wang Gong invited me to join his newly formed Slaughtering Hero Alliance, a coalition of several teams gathering to eliminate Shuxiang together. This news caught me off guard. I paused to ponder, telling him I could not decide alone and needed to consult my team first. Wang Gang smiled and told me he understood. He asked me to keep the secret, warning that revealing it would make me his enemy. He instructed me to turn my tuning knob clockwise to the bottom, say a few words, and wait 10 minutes if I decided to join. Curious, I asked why he chose to recruit me. He joked at first, claiming my ability to infuriate Shuxiang proved my strength. Then he admitted with a bitter smile that out of 100 teams on his screen, only 71 were still active, while 29 had gone completely offline and likely died. Of those 71, no more than 20 were in good shape and checking in regularly, with most being lone wolves or unreliable players. Hearing this, I realized there simply were not many solid teams left to pick from.